A couple things before I get started. This matters to me. I find myself just deeply honored to have been a part of your week. Thank you for. Oh no, seriously, y'all. I'm just kidding. Okay, just kidding. For me personally, weeks like this are great because having been a youth pastor for so long, spending my life trying to train young people to be involved in ministry, stuff like this is just life-giving to me, and I appreciate that. In particular, working with my good buddy Nate, who is the only guy I know right now that can rock a mustache and be cool. You might have a mustache, you might be cool, but I call Nate's a trustache because he's so trustworthy. Anyway, for all the CIY staff, Rob Jones and I get to work together at the same church in Texas. He and the band have been friends of mine for a long time. I love worshiping with them. But really, honestly, it's been you guys. I appreciate the chance to be together. Let me pray. Father, I'm grateful for a chance to stand with my brothers and sisters in Christ, and the honor and privilege it is to talk about you. So I pray you would help our time together. Help me speak clearly and well, things that bring you joy. Holy Spirit, we pray you'd guide this time, that it would be full of your love and wisdom, and what I say would come from you and from your heart. And Lord, I pray that for the students and the leaders in this room, all the tech people, everybody who's involved, God, I pray you help us hear what you have to say, with hearts ready to learn, excited about what you have for us. Because if you have something good, we know we'll be blessed. And if we're doing this out of our own strength, we know this is a waste of time. So God, be with us in good ways. Pray this in the name of Christ. Amen. When I was a kid, I was 12 years old. My older brother Chip, he was 19 at the time. He walks up and he says, "Hey, you got to come to a movie with me." And of course, being 12 years old, my older brother was awesome. I'm like, okay. And he took me to a movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yep. And like my experience with the paratroopers, I'm watching Indiana Jones use a bullwhip, and I'm like, oh yeah. And then I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but there's this scene where this giant dude with a sword comes out, right? And he's all like, woo! And he's like, okay, bang, and just shoots him. And I'm like, that guy's so smart. And I was like, I want to be Indiana Jones. And I mean, it was everything that I really secretly, deep in my heart, wanted to be. I mean, come on, the ladies loved him. You know what I'm talking about? They're all like, oh, Indy. And he's got that cool hat. He wears a leather jacket. Oh, wanted to be Indiana Jones. Jungles, adventure. But there I was on the farm, on the ranch. My dad was like, adventure, go do your chores. Right? I want to do something exciting. Really? Feed the cows. Oh. What are you afraid of? I was super afraid, ready? Of being bored. Now, some people say, you mean like daily bored? I mean, what I meant was like growing up and having no purpose, growing up and being boring, because I'm not being mean. That really works for some people. Like that, for them, that's like the way life really gives them joy. I was like, I'm going to die if I have to live on this same ranch for the rest of my life. If I have to do the same thing I've done for the last 20 years, I'm going to kill I can't handle it. I was scared of it. Part of it was I did so poorly in high school that when it came time to go to college, very few places would accept me. Tried to think of a career that would be reasonably enjoyable, and I couldn't think of anything. I was terrified of that. What are you scared of? I heard somebody say clowns. Okay, you want to hear something? Okay, listen. Everybody focus on me. Okay. My brother, the therapist, he's the one who took me to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. He showed me a site one time that psychologists and people can go to. It's a complete listing, I'm not kidding, it's a complete listing of all of the documented phobias that people have. Okay, I recognize by doing this, I am somewhat of a terrible person, but I went through and I found the funniest ones. right? And people are like, that's not funny. People are scared of that. I'm like, I know, but it's kind of funny. So if you look at them, the number one fear in the whole world, you probably remember this, but the number one fear in the whole world is actually not spiders. It is fear of public speaking. It is the highest rated phobia that people have worldwide. Number 2, spiders. Number 3, snakes. But now listen to this. Those are just normal, right? Like, you guys have heard of claustrophobia, agoraphobia, yes? Here's some that I think are just, I don't know, they either sound funny or they just are funny. Melissophobia. Right? You're like, fear of Melissas? No. Fear of bees. But I think melissophobia is funnier than fear of bees, right? I'm sorry. I can't even hardly say it. Consecutaliophobia. This is actually in the web. This is on the list. It's an unreasonable fear of chopsticks. Oh, no. Get him away. I don't know. There's a bunch of people in your church that have ephibophobia, the fear of teenagers. Right? And you're like, oh, yeah, Mrs. Johnson, back row on the left? Sure. Geniophobia. You might be double afraid of me. Fear of chins. And some of you are like, oh. Linonophobia. Sounds funny. Fear of string. Okay, whatever. This one's just ironic. It's just, you're like, okay, just being silly. Somebody, honestly, you're like, okay, when whoever made this up, they were being just terrible. Sesquipedalophobia. It's a fear of long words. Right? You're like, stop it. That's not nice. Some of you have homilophobia, which is a fear of sermons. And I didn't see this one listed, but I'm pretty sure the girls in my high school had robophobia somehow. But when we talk about unreasonable fears, that's one thing, right? People are afraid of the dark. When I was a kid, we lived at our ranch had this place where we didn't have, trash service out in the country. So we had to burn our trash, and so we had a burn barrel. And it was big. It was an old stock tank, and, my dad would burn it once a week, but we'd throw the trash out there. Well, at night, sometimes it kind of went from oldest to youngest. The youngest always had trash duty because everybody else did other work. So Dad would be like, take out the trash. I go, okay. Well, that was fine until I saw my first movie about vampires. And here's why that matters, okay? In my mind, I'm like, okay, vampires, they're not real. And then I watch this movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe, right? once that seed's in there, and then it's dark, you're like, maybe. So I go to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I'm scared of vampires. And she's like, there's no such thing as vampires. My dad's like, that's ridiculous, take out the trash. My brother Matt, no lie, Scholastic books, do you guys still do those? Okay, he actually spent his money and bought me a book on vampires. And he slid it across the table to me one day and he goes, hey, they are real. And I'm like, what? He goes, they couldn't write a book about it if they weren't real. And I'm like, get it away. And so, no kidding, for a while, my dad would be like, take out the trash. And I'd be like, it's not dark yet? No problem. But if it was dark, my dad would be like, take out the trash. And be like, nope. Now again, grew up on a farm with a cowboy dad. You can probably guess what's coming if I back talk. And he'd be like, take that trash out. And I'd be like, no, sir. Now, I wasn't ever disrespectful because I'm not dumb. But, I was like, He goes, you know what's going to happen? I'm like, He goes, you would rather take that than go take the trash outside? Absolutely. And here's the reason, okay? Because we had yard lights, and but here's the thing. There was a garage here and a tool shed here, and between them there was this place that no light could enter, right? During the day, it was a cool place to hide or, run through. During the night, it was the pathway to the netherworld, right? It's the portal to hell, and I was like, I'm not going over there. When people are afraid, they often try to think of it in terms like this. They're like, if you're afraid, the answer is courage. Sorta. Because courage is, it's kind of hard to define. I like how John Wayne, the cowboy, says it. Courage is when you're scared to death, but you saddle up anyway. That's a good cowboy talk. I like that. Other people are like, it's you put one foot forward, one step at a time, even if you're afraid. There's all kinds of ways people talk about that. But here's the truth. It's not courage that really fixes fear. It's security. Let me say that again. Courage is helpful. Listen to me. Courage only comes through a sense of security. One time I was with my brother Matt, and he was taking too long talking to some girl, and I didn't have my driver's license yet, but I knew how to drive because I grew up on a farm, and I was like, all right, here we go. And I was just going to show him, I'll go hide his pickup truck. So no lie, he's talking to some girl, making googly eyes at her. I'm like, what a loser. I jump in his pickup truck, and I'm like, I put it in reverse, gun it, and I slam into a guy's car named Robbie Lemke. Robbie Lemke was a fullback on the football team. I was 14. I weighed 104 pounds, maybe. And Robbie Lemke could bench like 375 pounds. Robbie hears the crash of his car, comes out, and he turns around and he says, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, well, this is it, everybody. Adios. But then my brother Matt walks out. And no lie, this happened. It was one of those things where you're like, kind of sometimes you hate your brother. Sometimes you're like, because I'm hiding behind him, and he walks up, he puts his hand on Robbie Lemke's chest, and he goes, hey, back it down. Lemke's like, hey, man, okay, geez, you hurt my car. And he goes, we'll fix it. Just relax. No lie. I'm like behind my brother being like, sucker, right? Because I was secure in the idea that my brother Matt, bigger than me, tougher than me, smarter than me, was going to watch out for me. There's something about security that gives us this ability that when we're afraid, right, we go, oh, I'm going to be okay. Look who I've got with me. Grab your Bibles or your phones. In 1 John chapter 4, he's talking about this contrast between fear and love, which I think is fascinating because John's onto the same idea. He's saying that, listen, the answer to fear is not more strength. The answer to fear is love of God. Watch this. Starting in verse 15. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him and he in God. We have come to know and have believed the love which God has for us. God is love, and the one who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. And by this, love becomes perfect inside us, so that we can have confidence someday when in judgment, because as he is, we're going to be the same way. Look at verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. When we have this experience with the God of the universe, Eric talked about this last night. Sometimes when we feel bad about ourselves, we run and hide like Adam and Eve did. And we're afraid. We're afraid to admit it. We're afraid to talk to God. We're afraid to be with God. We're afraid to abide with God because we're afraid that he's going to be so frustrated, so mad. But that's not what fear is about. Love is the security that says, it's okay. Quick review of the week. Light and dark. Believe and deny. Obey and rebel. Love and fear. When you think about your life, like I know, I remember, I can feel back to the time before I was a Christ follower. I'm about to graduate from high school. I'm about to go launch my life as a grown-up, sorta. And I realized I'm afraid of the future. If you're afraid of the future, God says, don't trust in yourselves. Don't lean on your own understanding. Trust in God. He will make your path straight. You can be secure knowing that your big brother Jesus is in front of you, right? He's going to show you the way. If you're worried about money, and Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, don't worry about money. God knows you need it. He's going to take care of you. Don't worry about it. Don't be afraid, little flock. That's the word he uses. Don't be afraid, little flock. You worried about your next steps in Proverbs? You worried about, what's going to happen, how God's going to use you? Isaiah. Here's what I'm trying to get at. If you're walking with God, if you're walking close with Jesus, you are walking with the scariest, baddest, toughest guy in the whole creation. I don't know if you like the Chronicles of Narnia, but my family for years is awesome. If you're not familiar with them, they're fun kids' books that have a lot of deep meaning. But one of the ones that has been fun is because I have both a son and a daughter. We've been able to identify with the boys and the girls and dangers and stuff like that. And so on long road trips, which we have a lot of, we listen to those. We did that for years. There's always a part, and I always get choked up every time. In the second book, Prince Caspian, Lucy, the youngest, has a task to do. She's afraid. And she knows she's supposed to do it. She's afraid. She has to go against her big brothers and sister. And she has to stand up against their desires. And she has to do what's right, even though she's probably going to be made fun of for it. She keeps failing. And finally, she meets the hero of the story, Aslan the lion, who's representing Jesus in the stories. And they're having a conversation. And she's like, okay, now here you are. That's awesome. You can do it. He's like, no, you have to do it. And she's like, I can't. And he says this phrase to her. I still get choked up. And he says, courage, dear heart. Even though you don't see me, I am with you. My daughter has had all kinds of health problems, a lot of difficult times. She's had enough surgeries and biopsies that the anesthesiologist has to talk to her legally. They have to say, listen, some people don't react well to anesthesia. You might die on the operating table. My daughter's just 17, and she's been through 5 or 6 of these where she's had to look death square in the face and be like, well, okay. We've had some really hard times with that. It's been really affecting our family for a long time. So one of the things we've had to start doing with ourselves and with my daughter is that when things get difficult, when it's time to do something, we say, I hold her hand and I look in her eyes and I say, courage, dear heart. In fact, just for fun, for a graduation present, because of her condition, she's never going to be allowed to get a tattoo, but she's always wanted one. I got her 10 temporary tattoos that say, courage, dear heart. So that when she's traveling or something like that, she can put it on her arm and remember. Look, perfect love casts out fear. He loves you just the way you are. Now, is he going to ask you to grow? Yep. Is he going to ask you to do scary stuff? Sure. Is life going to be full of pain? Absolutely it will. But here's the difference. If you're alone, if you have nobody to help you, then life is terrifying. If you know that your big brother, the one who has gone before you into all the things that are the worst in the world, if he's right with you, you can say, hey, courage, dear heart. He's with me. Because he loves you. I know. It's hard to believe that sometimes, but he loves you. At some of our worst moments in the hospital, at some of our worst moments with my mom and her Alzheimer's, with some of my worst moments in my life and career, I've had times where I'm like, are you sure? Because it doesn't feel like it. And I've gotten to the point where now, instead of just telling my daughter, I've had to tell myself, courage, dear heart. So, I went to Bible college for learning about Jesus when I was 18. turned 19 while I was in my first year of Bible college. All my friends went to the University of Nebraska, and they partied like crazy, but I was like, I got to get away from that. I'm a brand new Christian. I need to learn more about Jesus. And I had a pretty good year. I did. I worked with an old nursing home ministry, a prison ministry. I learned a lot there. Oh, man. Anyway, that's another story. But on top of all that, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And anyway, this is 1984, and I was talking to the guys at CIY way back when they had this little house. And they said, hey, we're going to do a mission trip to a place called Guatemala. You want to go? I'm like, sure, why not? Where's Guatemala? They're like, come on, it'll be fun. I'm like, okay. So 19 years old, I raised some money. I pray about it. God shows up, miracles. Wow. And so I'm going to go to Guatemala. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Well, it was kind of like there was a 2-week period that I had to be out of the dorms. I had to go home, and then I had to come back to Joplin, and then we were going to drive a non-air-conditioned school bus to Houston, Texas. Blech. But I did that. I went home, and of course, all my friends who had gone to university, were there, and they're like, dude, where you been? And I was like, well, On the way home, no lie, I had to drive through Lincoln, Nebraska from Joplin to get to my home on the other side of Nebraska. And I showed up, and this is one of those things where I'm sure the devil was involved. City of 150,000 people or more, I don't know, who knows, a bunch of people. I'm driving up to a stoplight, and I hear my name. There were 30 people in my graduating class, okay, 30. I hear my name, Rob Maupin, how the blankety blank are you? Where you been? I'm at a stoplight, and one of my classmates is standing on the corner yelling at me. He's like, pull over, let's talk. So I pull over, and this is what he says. He goes, I can't believe you missed it. I go, well, missed what? He goes, the most epic year of my life. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, the parties, the fun, the booze, the sex, the joy. It was so much fun. I can't believe you missed it. And I was like, what? And he looked so happy. And he looked like he was having so much fun. And I was like, whoa. And I'll be honest, I went into kind of a tailspin. I was like, wow, I missed it. He looks like he's having way more fun than me working with a bunch of prisoners. Let's be honest. He looks like he's going to go get a really fancy, high-paying job. I'm going to, if I hang out with my friends, I'm going to be a broke preacher all my life. Ugh. And I got grumpy, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. And so I told my mom and dad, I go, I'm not going to Guatemala. I'm going to drop out of Ozark. I'm going to go to UNL next year. And they were like, you know what, you can do what you want about school. They said, but you raised money for that trip to Guatemala. You got to go. People gave you their money on purpose. You got to fulfill that. I thought, well, that's fair. But I was not happy. I drove back a couple weeks later, and it's hot as all get out, and my dorm didn't have air conditioning, and I was sweating, and that always makes me grumpy, and I was, like, this is stupid. And then I look around at my friends, and they're doing the stuff that I just, at that time in my life, I didn't do. They're, like, sitting around, like, playing guitars, like, singing praise songs in a little huddle, and I'm like, what? They're like, isn't it great to sing Kumbaya and hold hands and, like, be sappy and gross? And I'm like, no! I want to go have fun. And they're like, yeah, this is fun. I'm like, no. And then they're like wearing khaki pants. What? I'm a cowboy. I want khaki pants. And then we all, like, one guy's wearing this little straw hat. I'm like, seriously, what is wrong with you people? We get on this super hot bus, and they're all like singing and being like, isn't it great to serve Jesus? I'm like, this is so stupid. And so, because they're driving me crazy, I went to the back of the bus, and I'm sitting on the luggage because we got these giant duffel bags, and I'm like, and so I'm in my heart, I'm just yelling at God. I'm like, God, I'm a brand new Christian. I'm trying to serve you. I can't believe I lost all this stuff. And it's like I heard a word from God showed up in my heart, and it just said, stop and look. Well, that had never happened before, and it caught me off guard, and I was like, what? I look at my roommate, Darren. Khaki pants guy, right? Wearing flip-flops. And I'm like, and Darren looked genuinely happy. He really was. He looked genuinely happy. Looked at my friend Jimmy, and he was excited about stuff, and he was wearing this weird, Spanish crocheted vest. I'm like, what are you doing? And a goofy hat, and it was hot. And he goes, look, and I heard God say, look around. And I'm going through the eastern Texas, the piney woods and these big hills and pine trees. And no kidding, and I heard God say, where are you going? And I was like, well, the jungle. And then it hit me. I'm Indiana Jones. I'm Indiana Jones. And here's what I want to tell you. God has never let me be bored. The places I've been, the things I get to do. This next fall, just alone, I'm going to go to some of the darkest places in the world to help people work on how they're going to reach other people for Christ. I get to do stuff that I only dreamed about as a kid on the farm. What God has done in my heart has been amazing. I have had to learn to live in poverty. I've been on welfare twice. I've had to lose babies from miscarriage. I've had to watch my parents suffer and grow old. I've had all this sorrow and pain. At the same time, the whole time, I've had the chance to walk with Jesus. And he took the things that I was most afraid of, a worthless, boring life, and he gave me something I never could have imagined. Look, courage only happens when you have the resources to deal with the problem. You're not going to get out of pain in this life. You won't. So quit avoiding it. You're not going to get out of fear. You won't. But you have somebody with you who loves you. If you choose and chase after Jesus, you're not going to have to fear. All of the pain, look, I know it's coming. All of the overwhelming pressure. It's okay because Jesus is with you. And what he's saying to you today is courage, dear heart. Courage.